Look at there. We've got Brian. Brian just posted on. Good morning, Brian. I see Pierre. I see Susan. I see Tom Jenkins. Haven't seen you guys in a while, Tom. Uh Chuck. And just so you guys know, I do we did things a little different this week. If you guys are hopping on right off first, I'll get to that. So last meeting we had somebody that decided to take over the call and post their own videos, and it was quite an it was really not very nice. But so we've made it so you guys are automatically muted. Um, and so if in order to unmute yourself, we actually will have to unmute you guys. So just so you kind of know that. But you guys can use that chat bar. So if you guys can still use a chat bar, if you have any questions or anything in the middle, if you guys want to give any kind of context or anything, feel free to, add in the chat bar there. But we're just not going to allow people to take over the screen and take over the show, kind of what happened last month on accident there. So we do apologize for that, but things happen sometimes. So Christy, gonna see you guys next week. I'm excited about going on the cruise next week. I see Iva and Chris and Richard. Mark, welcome to the show. We're going to get started here. Always try to give people a couple minutes to kind of get on before we jump into the swing of things. Um, Appreciate that level of protection. Yes, Chuck, me too. We looked into like upgrading our service, but I just don't think it's worth it to upgrade the whole Zoom. Um, and we'll see how the next couple calls go, because hopefully it was just a one-time deal. Um, oh, look at that. It said it happened on Sunrisers too. So we'll at least it's not just me. So, all right. Well, we're gonna get started today. I've got Mike Kvachkoff. Actually, Mike is a second generation. Are you second generation, Mike, or third generation?
Second. Yeah.
Second. Okay. So his dad, Doug Kvachkoff, was actually our original attorney 15 years ago. And I actually used to rent from his dad. We were in his upstairs office, and then we moved across the street, actually to another one of my attorney's offices today, Kevin's office. That used to be my office over there. But Mike is a young guy who's kind of made his niche in real estate with kind of two things with title, because he kind of took over his dad's title company, Indiana Title Network. And if you are a buyer of ours, or if you guys loan money to us, or if you guys do anything to that, we work with us in those realms. You've seen that name, Indiana Title Network, because it's what we use for 99% of all of our transactions, which I'm sure Mike appreciates now.
Yeah.
Um, his dad definitely appreciated it, especially when we were doing like 300 deals a year, back to back closings, wholesale. So it was literally 600 transactions there, with 300 wholesale deals we did in that one year. I would never do that again, folks. But anyways, so Mike's going to be on today, and he's going to talk about something that he is super passionate about, and I think he is one of the utmost experts in the entire country, and that is tax sales. And our county is very unique in the aspect that we have tons of tax sales and people from all around the country that actually buy tax sale houses right here in Lake County, Indiana. So he's going to talk about that. I'm excited to have him on. And he's a good speaker. You guys will have a good time with him. He spoke last year's free for all event. And I'm probably going to be able to get him on this year's free for all event as well. I haven't talked to him about that yet, but more than likely I'll probably be able to get him to speak at that as well. He's a good guy. And he's an investor as well. So, me and him actually had a conversation not too long ago about investing more for himself and going to multifamily and buying some more stuff. So I'm excited about that for him and in that journey with him. Let me get here. Last month we had Larry Goins on. If you guys weren't here live for that call, I would encourage you guys to go back and listen to that call. Larry kind of always gives some really good tips, and he's really kind of hands-on with his business. And there's lots of things I've learned from Larry over the years, and I think you guys can learn from him as well. I had a super busy month last month. I swear this might be the busiest quarter of my entire life, with things that are going on with kids. My daughter did a competition. I was out of town speaking. What else did we do last quarter? Lots of things happened. I also went to so I went to HSA. which is a family office club. And one of the things I wanted, and this is actually one of my investors that I didn't even know was one of my investors. It's always good to meet those people that are investing in your company and you don't even know that they're already investors. So this is somebody that Adam had met through the last couple of years or so at HSA, and he and it was good to just kind of catch up with them. But one of the things that I wanted to kind of point out from that meeting, and this is we were in Nashville, so we had a good time. Um, and one of the things that they talked about at this family office club is, and they always talk about like your investment portfolio, and they always talk about like your allocation, your asset allocation. And this is one thing that, I've pushed hard for the last 2 or 3 years on, and I've worked really hard, even personally, to be liquid. And this was something that they really pushed this last time. It said um, to make sure that your asset allocation has a lot or a decent amount of liquidity in it. So what does that mean? Um, sometimes it's cash, right? Sometimes it's liquid in like the form of maybe gold investment or bonds or things that are easily, money market accounts. Um, those are ways that you can stay liquid. And they kind of started the whole thing talking about colleges and the like Yale has this big fund that helps fund Yale, and it has to go on in perpetuity. Like they want this to go on forever and ever and ever. They don't want this thing to ever run out of money. So they've got to make sure that when they choose investments, they need to make sure that there's liquidity, it's low risk, and there's things that they just can't lose money on. Now, obviously, they do venture capital. It's interesting how much venture capital they actually do, but they buy things like real estate, they buy leverage buyouts, they have bonds, they have precious metals, they buy natural resources. So things like that, into having kind of an endowment type of discipline, and they kind of talked about that, and I thought it was important. I also wrote down a couple, oh, now it's not going to work, right? That's always, nice when you're like live and your screen's not working, that you're trying to kind of cheating off of. But the first thing was to kind of have a plan, but why I thought was really important. Why to make sure that you have um these types of liquidities in your account is because, especially as you get older, things happen. Health needs, might be an issue. Something that was interesting, they also talked about that I kind of never really thought of, is the first couple years of retirement, you tend to spend more money than you normally do in the rest of your retirement year. So kind of keeping that in mind as well. They also talked about cash flow is important, in your portfolio. And again, I just thought it was very interesting. I thought I would kind of point that out this morning when that is all said and done. Also, so me and my wife, something that we've tried to do. We've been married for 26 years, and we try to go. I bet you out of the 26 years we've been to 22. I think 22 is the number. 22 different marriage retreats. And we don't do this because we think we have a big problem. We just do this because we feel like we want to stay better and we want to stay right with each other. So just a quick five things here. There was I think they said 1,000 couples were studied in this survey or the study. And they looked at couples that didn't stay together, that like, left after 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and couples that stayed together 25 plus years. And they said, what is the big difference? Like, what is that big thing out there? And it was interesting. They didn't have any big reason, but they said that there's 5 things that they saw that was in common with 95% of the people that stayed together for 25 years or longer. And I'm like, okay, I better write this down because this to me, it's a big deal. So these are the 5 things. First of all, go over your schedule with your spouse daily and say goodbye. I was like, okay, I can do that, right? I can go over my schedule. And the whole purpose of going over your schedule was to see how you can be helpful to your spouse, or how your spouse can be helpful to you, not to kind of blurb out and be, complaining, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. It's more about like listening during that conversation, not speaking. The next one is show appreciation and gratitude towards your spouse daily. So show appreciation and gratitude towards your spouse daily. Um, I'm sure every one of you guys out there that are married try to do this every day, but like making it a discipline. Make sure that you show appreciation and thank your spouse and show gratitude. Tell them that you love them every day. The third one was non-sexual touch daily. And obviously, this is kind of a fun thing between men and women. It seems like the men normally want to make sure it goes into a certain direction. But this was something that was very important, non-sexual touch daily. The next one, number 4, something that me and my wife did, I would say very religiously for at least 20 years of our marriage. The last couple of years, it's been a little tough, but it's also been weird. Like me and my wife go on weekly dates, probably 2 or 3 times a week for lunch because we work together, right? But weekly date night was something that they said this is very common. This is something that we see. And then the last one is a low stress conversation when you get home about your day. And again, that key word there was low stress on that conversation. Not all about trying to, complain about the day, but kind of just making sure that you are reconnecting. And those are simple things. And they made a challenge to us to go out and spend the next 30 days doing these 5 things and to see how it changes your relationship. One more thing I've got. This just happened to us last week. So we were one of my attorneys, actually not Mike, another one of my attorneys, Kevin, brought us a house, and people needed to they needed to sell their house. And the day of closing, we go to check the house, and the utilities were not turned on, and the water was not supposed to be on, but we found out the water was on, and there was a foot of water in the basement. So somehow the water was on, the pipes had burst because it's cold up here, guys, up here in Northwest Indiana. And so I just wanted to remind everybody, always check the house the day you close. Like on the way to closing, don't forget, don't let this be I've also had houses where we've shown up the day before closing or the day morning of, and a tree had fallen on the house. So always, always, always before you close, right before you close, remember to check the house and make sure that nothing has changed in condition. Now, for us, we had gotten such a good deal on this that we felt like this was still a good deal for us. We still wanted to move forward with it, but we did ask for them to pay to have it pumped out. We got a $1,500 extra credit right before closing. So, and just remember, 100% of the time that ask, the answer is no. So always ask for a discount when things like this happen if you feel like it's still a good deal. All right, upcoming, what we got coming up? We've got Dealmaker coming up March 5th, 6th, and 7th. Hopefully you guys will join me at that event. And then next week, I will be on the cruise. There's several people on the call that are going to be on the cruise. I'm excited about that cruise, get to hang out with a bunch of friends. I actually counted it up yesterday. And from the people that were on the cruise last year, from last year to this year, I've done 22 deals with people that were on this cruise. So I'm excited to kind of get back and reconnect. Some people, it was their very first deal ever. And many of those people, it was their first deals with me. So either I loan money to them, they loan money to us, we JV'd on deals, and it's really fun to get together and lock yourself on a boat with people. And I'm excited about next week. And then one of the most things I'm excited about the most about this whole entire cruise is one of the days, the day in Cancun, I believe it is, we are doing a chair drop with Augie with Share the Love. And I'm excited about that. Hopefully you guys are too. I know Chuck just did one of those with him, and he had a great time. And I'm really excited about the opportunity to be a part of that. I do want to remind everybody, and I will just keep beating this drum. If anybody's interested in helping our seniors go to Ecuador for their senior trip, I do still need some donations. I'm up to $17,000 raised, and we need about $8,000 more. So we probably need that in the next 30 to 60 days. So if anybody's interested in helping out with that, let me know. If you know somebody that would be interested in helping kids get to the mission field to be able to see another country. And we're going to Ecuador this year, and I'm excited about going with them, and me and my wife with them. I do want to remind everybody about the free-for-all event. We are starting to sell tickets like crazy, and we're 7 months out. So I do want to make sure that I remind you guys about this, but get your tickets, goodsuccess.com /free-for-all. These are the different package. You guys can have a regular general admission, or you guys can do the VIP. I highly recommend the VIP. We've got a new location. It's going to be in Gary for that sponsor night on that first night that only the VIPs will be invited to. and I'm excited about that as well. And we're going to have a really good time. And one of the things I'm excited about the actual free for all event is one of our featured speakers that we're going to have. If you guys do not know Jennifer Ruth Green, you are going to get to know her. She's a colonel. And she just ran for office locally, and she's been very involved in politics. She's actually going to be on one of our governor's teams here moving forward in Indiana. And she wrote a book, People Quit Jobs. People don't quit their jobs, they quit their bosses. And I'm excited to have her as one of our speakers. She doesn't really have real estate. In fact, I'm actually teaching her how to do some real estate right now, but she's a good friend of ours. She actually goes to our church, and I'm excited to have her as one of our featured speakers. I think you guys will really enjoy her for that. If you guys want to get the videos from the last meeting, you guys can definitely do that. Chuck says do the VIP. It's definitely worth way more, and I agree. So there you guys go. If you guys are not part of the Facebook group, please get in that. A lot of the information that's going to be coming out for the free for all event will be in there for that. And as always, remember to be a conduit, not a bucket. Work to have to give. Our next call, actually really excited about this call. Eckert Enterprises. Troy Eckert's going to be our speaker. March 12th is going to be the next call. And he's going to be basically talking about land with oil and gas royalties or oil and gas mineral rights. It's the best way I can explain it is owning land that oil companies pay you to own. Okay. So it definitely is real estate related. And it's interesting. Derek Long, who used to work for Quest Trust Company, he told me he was making so much money with Eckert Enterprises that he was making more money on his investments than he was working for Quest. That's why he ended up moving, and he's actually working with these guys now. They're actually going to also be a sponsor at the free for all event, and I'm excited to have them. But and I was talking to Derek this morning, and I found out our family owns land in New York State, and in that land there's like 54 acres, and there's a natural gas pipeline that goes right through our land, and we get royalties. We literally every single month get paid because of how much oil goes through that. And he's like, I know exactly what that is. He's like, that's the I think he said it's called the Connecticut pipeline, and that is owned by Eckert Enterprises. And I was, wow, I didn't even know that this guy is actually already paying me. But he actually helps people set that up, and I think you guys will be excited about that. To me, it's a different way you can make money without rehab, without tenants, without toilets. And I'm excited about having him on the call next month. All right, Mike, you ready to go, sir?
Yes, sir. Ready to go.
All right. So without further ado, I'm going to let Mike go. He's going to talk about tax sales in Northwest Indiana, and he's going to share his screen. And hopefully he'll have some time at the end there. I'm sure there's always lots of questions when it comes to tax sales.
Awesome. All right.
How are you, Mike?
I'll share my screen with you guys. Baby's doing great. He slept for 3 hours last night, so if I lose focus, that's why. No, he's doing good. I was told he's gonna start sleeping more, so fingers crossed. Let's see here. I lost my. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, yeah, thank you, Tom. It's always a pleasure to talk. I see a lot of familiar faces. I was on the cruise last year with some of you guys, so this is it's nice to see you guys all again. Tom, I appreciate the venue to make this happen. But yeah, like Tom said, we're going to talk about tax sales. This is going to be more of a 3,000 or 30,000 foot view of tax sales. The idea being it's more countrywide and how the country looks at tax sales rather than my normal presentation, which is just Lake County. If you are interested in tax sales, I would highly recommend. I'm going to go through some of the states that are really good and some of the states that I think are not so good. But one of the best counties in the country is probably Lake County, Indiana. We have 10,000 parcels for sale every year. Now, not all of them are great. Obviously, a lot of them may not be, but I've got clients from not only all over the country, but all over other countries too. I've got clients from Europe and that come and invest, and it's just that's how powerful of a market we have. So it's a testament to the region, and if you're interested, I would definitely look at it. So, like Tom said, my name is Mike Kvachkoff. I'm the president of Kvachkoff Law and Associates. I can officially put associates on there because I just hired my first associate in June. So we are ever expanding. We do primarily focus on tax litigation and eviction law, which I'll touch on a little bit at the end, and then of course the title industry. We run the title company as well. So today's presentation is about tax sale generally. So we're going to talk about how to buy at a tax sale, how to do some due diligence, what states are good, what states aren't. I always start off with this, and I think Tom can attest. One of the greatest things about being able to make money is also to give it back, right? So one of the ways that we try to do that is we endorse Together Saving Paws. It's a 501(c)(3) that was started by a client of mine about 4 or 5 years ago. Um, this client really kind of got me up off the ground in tax sales, so it felt right to contribute back to them. So what we do is we promote them, and we donate for every certificate we're hired to handle. On the tax sale side, we donate a portion of those. It's not a portion of the fee; it's a portion of the proceeds that goes to Together Saving Paws. What they do is they train animals to be therapy dogs, therapy cats, therapy animals for the benefit of human trafficking survivors, women, children, men, anybody who's been a victim of human trafficking. They help pay for the training of the animals, and then they also help pay for the bulletproof vests that the animals wear when they're actually seeking out the victims. So it's a really cool organization. If you want to take a look at it, if you're looking for a new charity, please take a look. If not, that's obviously fine too. But I like to at least promote them when I do these. Um, so yeah, this is more of a when we're in person. Obviously, I'm assuming nobody's phones are going to be going off. I do have the chat up. If people have questions, I can kind of address them in real time. If I miss one, Tom or Adam, if you guys could let me know. Um, but I do like to just kind of keep it real. I'm going to be very blunt. That's the way I believe in doing this. I think if you're an investor, I would hope you would appreciate that, mostly because I'm not going to candy coat something because that's not going to do you guys any benefit. Um, so we keep it real is the way that I put it. Obviously, none of this is legal advice. I wouldn't be a very good lawyer if I was giving legal advice over Zoom calls. Um, I'm not a CPA, so I can't tell you if any investments are good. And you kind of got to do your own research. I'm happy to show you how to do the research, but the final decision comes down to you. So please don't say Mike told me this was going to be a good deal, because that is definitely not what I'm doing. Okay, so and I've met a lot of you before. We're going to blow past this one. There's three types of tax sale auctions in generally speaking in the US. So there's a lien sale. This is the most popular sale. This is where you're actually buying us. You're not buying the property, but what you're bidding on is a lien. It's a certificate for the outstanding amount of taxes, and you take um, precedent over any other lien holder that exists when you convert a tax sale certificate to a tax deed. This is how Indiana operates, and along with a lot of the other bigger states. And what comes with the lien sale is a redemption period, which we'll get into in a minute. The other type of sale is what's called a deed or a redeemable deed sale. This is more the foreclosure style. So everyone knows in foreclosures, you go to the auction, you win the bid, and then you get the deed. So this is the same thing, except it's not for foreclosures, it's for taxes, so property taxes. In case anyone wasn't sure, that's what this is. That's how all of these properties culminate into an auction, is it's a result of not paying your property taxes. So like a foreclosure, you don't pay the bank, they foreclose on you. Like in a tax sale, you don't pay your property taxes if they foreclose or sell a certificate to the property for not paying your taxes. So a deed or redeemable deed sale, it's the same thing as a lien sale, except there's no redemption period. So they literally will just give you the deed after the auction. So it is a kind of akin to a sheriff sale. And then my favorite is I just call it Florida, because they have their own set of rules, and Florida just felt like the most appropriate way to describe it. Um, that's so that we're going to definitely get into what Florida's rules are. Okay, so let's talk about the
It's
tax lien
crazy. I
sale.
tried to look into Florida in Escambia County with Pensacola, and it's like you could have a tax sale every day of the week. It's the weirdest thing in the world.
Well, and I actually I subscribe to their roster, and they email me. They have weekly sales. And
Yeah.
they email me every week. Here's what's up for sale. And there's great properties there. It's just whether or not you'll end up with it is a different question. So okay, tax lien sales. Like I said, this is the most common. There's a few different ways to do it. There's a bid up, which is just your standard auction, started at whatever the minimum amount of taxes are. So let's say it's 10,000 is what's owed in taxes. That's your minimum, and you bid up until somebody stops bidding. Um, it's just a standard auction. Once somebody the auctioneer goes, okay, no any more bids. I mean, it's just like you see on TV. There's a bid down. So instead of bidding up the price, you're bidding down what you're willing to accept as a return. So in this instance, Illinois does this. In this instance, usually every state will have a cap as to what the highest amount of return you can possibly get is. And you will say, so let's say it's 18%. Most you can get is 18%. And Tom says, well, okay, I'll take 16%. And then I come back, I'm like, all right, I'll take 14%. Whoever bids the lowest return ends up with a certificate. Now it's still redeemable, except if it's a $10,000 bid and I just agreed to accept 12%, it's 12% per annum. So if it takes them a year to redeem, I get 12% of my $10,000 bid. If it takes them a day to redeem, I get 12% divided by 365. So it just depends on when it redeems. So it's kind of a floating scale. There's a first to bid. This is similar to what Florida does. Florida kind of encompasses all of these, but this is similar to what Florida does in that there's a people who have not bid before, who have not successfully bid, get first crack at these properties. So anybody who's a new time bidder, they kind of are trying to promote to what they'll do is just pool everybody together. It's kind of like how HUD only sells to occupants only for the first 30 days. Similar mentality. These are for first time bidders. And then there's a round robin. Round robin is almost like an NBA draft where you get drafted and you get to decide when exactly what round you are drafting or well, drafting what round you are picking your certificates. So it's purely based on a gamble. Um, Obviously, if you don't bid, there's really no loss, but it's just kind of a lottery as to when you get to bid on the properties. Only state that does that is Nebraska, though. Okay, so again, these are some of the states that have pretty good bid down rates. So Arizona, 16%, but the redemption period is 3 years. Now it's 16% per year. Illinois is 18%. Again, it's 3 years. Iowa is 24%. It's 21 months. Louisiana is 12%, 3 years. New Jersey is 18%, 2 years. There are other states, but they don't have quite the return that these states have, or they just have exceptionally long redemption periods. I didn't include those. So for instance, if you're bidding in Illinois, okay, so I was right. It's 18%. I'd say 18%. And then we kind of bid down from there until somebody stops agreeing to take less money. So deed sale, deed sales are, like I said, it's kind of like a sheriff's sale, but there's no redemption, but there's also no interest on the bids because you're getting the tax deed right away. The difference is that what a redeemable deed sale is probably the worst of both worlds. And by what of that, I mean it's redeemable still for 30 days, and you also don't get interest on it. So you might win the auction, and then your money's kind of outlaid for 30 days. And if they redeem, they're like, okay, here's your money back. But you don't actually get interest on it. So there aren't too many redeemable deed sales. Most of them are either deed sales or lien sales. But that is so if you see something that says redeemable deed, I'd probably stay away from that. Either way, once you are entitled to a deed, they issue you a tax deed, which eliminates the any interest of any parties that existed prior to the deed sale, with a very small subset of exceptions. Let's see. Okay, we did that. Okay, then there's Florida. So I told you I'd get into Florida. Florida is interesting because it's a combination of a deed sale and also a lien sale. So in Florida, it is a lien sale. It's an 18% return. It's bid down. So you can bid down from 18% and then you get the property and then you have to hold it for 2 years. So your money's outlaid for 2 years. If they redeem, you get your 18% per annum. If they don't redeem, what they do at the end of the 2 years is after the redemption period expires, you then have to request the county to sell the property at a public auction, basically a deed sale. So your money has been outlaid for now 2 years, and they say, okay, we'll give you a credit for what you're entitled to plus your interest. But now you got to bid on the property all over again. So I might hold this property for let's say it's $100,000 tax liability. I held it for 2 years. I have a credit for my 100 plus 18% times 2 years, so 36. So I have $136,000 credit. Let's say Tom comes in and bids 200. Well, I get my 136,000 2 years later, but I don't get the property because I couldn't outbid Tom. So it's kind of a combination of the two. It's between a lien sale and a deed sale. Um, there's no redemption after. There's no redemption. Like I can't say, well, I don't get a second bite at the apple if Tom outbids me. Then that's just where we're at. But you're in a sense bidding against yourself because you get a credit like a sheriff sale, but you still might have to pay more, or you just stick with whatever interest you're getting. Okay, so these are my favorite states for the bid down. So this is where you're bidding down the interest rate. Illinois, Maryland's got the best interest rate. I don't know a lot about the Maryland sale, but it definitely has a bunch of Illinois. I like Illinois because of the interest rate. I don't like Illinois because I don't think I have to tell anybody here that other than maybe California and New York, is one of the worst tenant-friendly states there is. So you might get the property, but then have to wait 2 years to evict somebody. Um, I, so that is what it is. Arizona is really good at evictions. So Arizona's probably my favorite just because I think the location is a little bit better than Maryland. But again, to each their own. But these are probably the top three for the bid down states as to what I would look at. For the bid up system, and again, remember this is just you're bidding up whatever the minimum taxes are, you're bidding up from there. So California is in fact a bid up system. I know it's not landlord friendly, but it's arguably got, other than maybe Florida, some of the fastest appreciating properties in the country. Florida has a great return on investment, even though you are kind of again bidding against yourself on the back end. So if you're looking at it from purely an investment standpoint, these are probably some of the best. Florida, and then Georgia has the best return. Um, Indiana is a kind of combination of the two. So Indiana has a blended rate. It's not just a per annum rate. Indiana uses whatever the minimum bid is. If the person redeems it in the first 6 months, you get a 10% return. If the person redeems it in months 6 through 12, you get a 15% return because they only get 1 year. So Indiana it's a lower return, but it's a shorter redemption period. So depending on when they redeem it, then you can either get a 10 or 15% return. What's great about Indiana that most other states don't do is they also have what's called a commissioner sale. So the commissioner's sale is not a 1 year redemption, it's 120 days. Now, these are going to be properties that didn't sell originally, and so they're put back up for sale. We're actually having one here in Indiana in April 8th, and there's about 8,000 parcels on it. The redemption period is 120 days for this sale, and the minimum bid gets reduced to $500. So the tax liability could be $50,000, but the minimum bid is $500, and then we just kind of bid up from there. So this is really where Indiana's competitiveness comes into play, is because this is a very unique auction cycle or auction style that really nowhere else in the country has other than Indiana. So this is probably why Indiana is so popular, is because you can get 40, $50,000 homes for $1,000 or $2,000. Now you got to wait for them to redeem. And again, these are going to be Class C, Class D neighborhoods, so you're not going to get a Class A $300,000 home at the commissioner sale. But you're definitely going to get properties that are habitable and rentable and people live in at a pretty good return, but at the same time at a pretty short redemption period. Okay, these are a couple more states. South Carolina's got a pretty good bid up system. It's 3% per quarter or 12% per year. But again, there's no bidding up the interest. So it's your whatever I'm sorry, there's no bidding up the bid. So whatever your bid is, whatever the taxes is, that's the bid. Um that's what your percentage is based off of. So it's 12% per annum, but it's based on the minimum liability. Whereas Indiana actually gives you additional interest on anything over the minimum. So let's use our example of $10,000 minimum bid and $100,000, 110,000 is your bid. So in Indiana, you get 10 or 15% on the 10,000, and then you get another 5% per annum on the extra 100. In South Carolina, you only get 3% per quarter on the minimum liability. So if you're bidding 10,000 as a minimum and your actual bid is 110, you're only getting interest on that minimum 10,000. Texas, I don't know why is not more popular, other than maybe because it's Texas. Um, it's 25% year one and 50% year two. That's your return rate. So I don't understand why it's not more popular. It's just not. It could be the redemption period, but they're not overly long. I mean, 2 years is not abnormal for an owner-occupied redemption period. So I always look at Texas just because the redemption rates are at least announced to be so absolutely prolific, but for some reason it just doesn't seem to get a lot of traction. So these are my three favorite, um, I guess, based on the type of sales. So we've got Texas, Georgia, and Indiana. Those would be the three that I would say are probably the most like at least have the best return, have the best bid down rate. So like Georgia's bid down, but it starts really high. Indiana's bid up, but you can it's the only place that you can purchase 50 homes for under 50 grand in the spring sale. So they all kind of have their own um, kind of things that make them special. So one of the things that we always talk about with people who use us or people who ask us questions about how to do bid at a tax sale, and there's a thing called a GIS system. Um, Almost every county that I've ever looked at has one. Some are better than others, but what it does is it shows you a satellite overview of the property that's tied to the parcel number. Now, every property in the country has a parcel number. So you're going to take the parcel number and plug it into this GIS system, and it's going to show you what you're buying. So what most clients don't do is use the parcel number. They use the address because that's what everybody knows. And I'm going to show you here in a minute why that's not going to work. So this is my favorite example. This is something that a client won for $500. I think everybody on here would probably buy this house for $500. This is a commissioner's sale. It's 2019. They bought this house for $500, right? I mean, this is what it looks like on Google Maps. Actually, these might actually be their in-person photos, right? They used the GIS system. They plugged in the address, which I told them not to do. And this is what the GIS systems go. So they thought they were doing awesome. So it was a problem though, is there was two 3500 West 19th. Now again, this is Lake County, Indiana. I can tell you Lake County, Indiana has an unfortunately notorious history of doing this. There's two common addresses for 3500 West 19th. And if you look, there's parcel numbers here are off by one. This means they're next to each other. So when they thought they had bought this really nice ranch style 3-bedroom home, what they actually bought is the 10 feet of land behind it. They used the GIS system, but they didn't use the parcel number. So any video we do, we harp on this. Any video I've ever done, I have harped on parcel number because every year I have clients call me and tell me. This year at the last sale we did, I had someone buy 13 properties and 11 of them look like this. And they went to a presentation of mine. They registered. I looked their name up and they had registered. They must not have watched it, but this is what 10 of their 13 purchases were. So they lost about 12,000 on that because there's just nothing you can do with this. So other situations that I've seen with clients is this guy bought half of a shed. This guy bought half of a house, or well, 2/3. This guy bought the middle of a house, right?
That's
So like, and it's all because we're looking it up by address. And so then what do, right? They drive by the house and they use the address and they're like, oh yeah, perfect. There's my house. But they don't look it up by the GIS. So this is something that you can use anywhere I've looked in the country, you can use this. Now, probably not every county of every state has one, but the most that I've ever looked at have one. So what I do to find it, Lake County's is really easy. Lake County, Indiana, GIS. Google, top link, pops right up. There's a search feature for Lake counties. All the systems are fairly similar. There's always a search bar. You always want to search by parcel number or PIN number, or sometimes it's called a unique PIN. But it should be some version of PIN or parcel identification number. Some of them are 18 digits, some of them are 7 digits, but you'll know what it is because the county will have to identify it because the county knows that's the only way to actually identify these properties appropriately is by using this PIN number. So you search it, you plug the PIN in, it puts a blue highlight around exactly what it is you're purchasing or what exactly that PIN is tied to. Lake County is awesome. Lake County has a great system. I've used a lot of other systems and they're not this detailed. Lake County has what's called a partial assessment detail. So you can click on it and it's going to tell you if you look, it's going to tell you the owner and their contact information. It's going to tell you the parcel number. It shows you 510 in Indiana. It's a single family house. Sometimes shows you a picture, probably a pretty dated picture, but sometimes shows you a picture. But most importantly, there's a property record card. So the property record card is going to show you things like single family dwelling. It's going to show you what it's zoned as. So R1 is residential, so single families, no duplexes. It's a two-story house. It's approximately 1,386 square feet of finished space. It's got a bath, one full bath. It's got, what else we got? Three bedrooms. So if you're looking for a two bedroom, then this is, and then maybe this isn't your house for you. If you're looking for a four bedroom, you can weed this one out. But it kind of gives you a broad scope outline of as to what the property is, what it looks like, what its structures are, how old the structures are. I mean, down here it says it was built in 1916. Okay, so it kind of gives you an idea of what the property is and looks like. So then once we have an idea, once we've gone through the list and we know what properties that we want to at least look at, you have to drive the homes. You have to, because I told you that picture is dated. It could be 10 years old. It could be a year old. It could be 6 weeks old. It doesn't really matter how old the picture is, because in these neighborhoods, in the CD, in an AB neighborhood, maybe you can get away with that. You still should drive it, because let's be honest, fires happen to everybody. Doesn't the neighborhood doesn't matter. Fires happen. And if it's on the tax sale list, something went wrong, and you need to find out what went wrong. Hopefully, it's not a fire. So, but in the CD neighborhoods, these pictures might not be recent. They might even be close. Google Maps is some Google Maps areas I'm in, their pictures are 10 years old, which means that Google car hasn't driven by in 10 years. So you need to drive the homes because you need to see what they look at. And then once you have once you have your list, you can actually there's a free software through Google. It's called Batch Geo. You plug in all your addresses and it shows them up on a map for you, and you can kind of get directions on how to navigate these. So you're not driving all over cities, when you could it at least gives you the ability to be the most efficient whilst you are driving. I always say have at least another person with you. One, if it's a long day of driving and looking at these things, company is always great. But two, it helps with like taking notes, maybe get somebody else's opinion. What do you think on rehab costs? What do you think on the neighborhood? Things like that. But also, most importantly, some of these neighborhoods are a little sketchy. And so it's helpful to have a partner there to just, I don't know, in case somebody approaches you and tells you to leave it, the one, do it. Don't ever argue with anybody who's telling you to leave. But two, it helps you get with a little more confidence to kind of talk to these people, because you can actually get a lot of information from the neighbors. The neighbors are going to ask questions if you look at enough of these homes. And they're not mad. They just want to know what's going on. Why are you taking pictures of the home? Why are you sitting in front of this guy's home? But most importantly, you can get a lot of really good information from the neighbors. Hey, when's the last time somebody lived here? Right? Oh, they just got evicted 3 weeks ago. Okay, that's good to know. That means the water's probably great. The pipes are probably fine. The heat's probably working. Power's probably working. Oh, the guy died 10 years ago. Well, pipes are probably blown. Maybe the gas works. Maybe, it just helps you with your budget when you're talking about when you're trying to put together a budget for these properties. It helps you with that. Um, Plus, you can get a lot of good information from neighbors as to maybe how to contact these people if you really want to. Um, you got to walk around the properties. So driving by in Northwest Indiana, there is a trend. I'm assuming it is not only Northwest Indiana, but Northwest Indiana has a trend where the neighbors will actually fix up the outside of vacant abandoned houses. And the reason they do that is because it affects their value. So curb appeal. Um, but what they don't do is they don't fix up the back of the house. So what you could end up with is the back of the house looks terrible and needs a ton of work, but the front of the house looks like like it might as well be A class. So it's definitely walk around. You're not obviously not allowed to enter the property because you don't own it. Um, Even if I've had situations where clients were invited in by the owner, still don't go in. Because what happened with that client is they then got sued for trespassing, and the guy claimed that they barged their way in. Fortunately, it was videotaped, so we got it kicked. But um, if don't well, let's not take any unnecessary risks. Police will come. If you look at enough of them, police will come. Same thing. I'm an investor. I was just looking at the house. And if they tell you to leave, then you leave. It's just as simple as that. This is why we walk around. So the front of this house was really great. It looked like that first house we looked at, the one on Ninth, where everyone's going to buy it for $500. But then when you walk around it, this is the backside. So the neighbors had actually gone to the front. The front had landscaping. The neighbors had gone to the front of the house, fixed it up, fixed the windows, fixed the door, fixed the landscaping. Everything looked pretty perfect until you walk around the backside. So that fortunately they did walk around the back sign. Somebody yesterday, I did this presentation yesterday. Somebody recommended using a drone. I think that's a great idea. It might have a little privacy issues, but at least it's not you walking in their backyard. So a drone actually could be really helpful. Chuck, I like your astounded face. Let's talk about different challenges that could possibly run into. So the worst case scenario, other than maybe somebody burning a house down, is a fire. With a fire is a bankruptcy. In a bankruptcy, your property gets locked up in the bankruptcy. Well, it's not your property. Your lien gets locked up in the bankruptcy for up to 5 years, sometimes longer. It just depends on how long the bankruptcy lasts. And there's not a really a good way to get out of it. The case law on these is really not sound enough for any attorney to tell you how this will play out. So if you've got an attorney saying, "Oh yeah, I'll get you out of that bankruptcy, no problem," they're not telling you the truth because the federal law, when it combines with the state law, it's just not. There's not been enough cases that have gone through this to set up enough precedent to allow us to really analyze a surefire way to get out of a bankruptcy when you get in one with a tax lien. So usually they kind of burn out on their own because 75% of Chapter 13 bankruptcies fail. So you kind of have to wait it out. But if it doesn't fail, you're still getting interest. You're still getting your money back over time. Lawsuits, so parties can file objections. So just because you ask the court for a tax deed, if the opposing party or the owner says, "Well, you didn't notify me properly," you're now in an active lawsuit. So lawyers are really important for that. Squatters. So in Indiana, you're not technically allowed to evict a squatter through small claims court. Reason being, they're not your tenant. There's no landlord-tenant relationship. So you have to do what's called an ejectment action. Just takes more time and more money. But the benefit of a tenant is you just go to the small claims court. Like when we go to small claims court, if Tom's got a tenant and he's evicted, I can get a hearing in 8 days and I can have him out 7 days later. It's 2 to 3 weeks and I can get you physical possession of the property. A squatter, you have to go through the regular court of general, what's called general jurisdiction. It takes a little bit, it takes quite a bit longer to get possession that way. Um, Title insurance is always a problem. So if you have a tax deed, the title company's industry has essentially set a gold standard rule that if there's a tax deed that's not at least 1 year old, you're not going to be able to close without one of two things: either an attorney to review the notices that were sent out to make sure it was done correctly, at which point you'll pay that attorney a fee to do that, or pay an attorney to do a quiet title. Quiet title is just a secondary action against the properties where you're saying, "Look, guys, we have a tax deed and it defeats your interest, and we needed a second court to basically affirm as much." So the title insurances can be a problem that you could run into. If so, just kind of keep that in mind when you're buying these things. It's not, as soon as you get the tax deed, you can't just go and sell it. I mean, you can, but you won't be able to get title insurance. IRS liens, the IRS used to just kind of bow down and say, "Yeah, sorry, you guys got a tax deed. We'll bow out. We don't care about our interest." But they've kind of changed that. So there's very specific forms you have to fill out now to send to the IRS. Most importantly, municipality liens. A lot of municipalities in Indiana take the position that their liens, they're cutting the grass or boarding up the property, they don't survive, or they do survive a tax deed. I don't think they're right, but the cost of what they're asked, the cost of what it takes to pay them to go away is generally pretty minimal, and they know that. So, it doesn't make sense to pay $1,000 for a quiet title if they'll go away for $400, right? So like it just makes more sense to pay them to go away. This is why we drive by multiple times. So had a client buy a property, again, not this property, this is the same house. Had a client buy a property, went through the 1 year redemption period, got a tax deed, and then drove by it after. They drove by it two times. One right before the sale, and two after they got their tax deed. And the house burnt down to the ground, nothing there, completely gone. They were out $100,000. And to make things worse, they were now the titled owner of this rubble vacant land thing that you can't get rid of. So they had to pay property taxes. So they're out $100,000 and they had to pay property taxes. So we have to drive by religiously. I usually say anytime you're about to incur a major expense, drive by the house. Major expenses would be the bid, hiring an attorney, or at the end, paying property taxes to become the owner of the property. So those are the three times I say drive these houses, anything you have a certificate for, because fires happen in a strange amount of times when somebody's house is sold at tax sale. We'll just put it that way. More often than the average, I would say.
Yeah.
So working on the property, I told you you can go around it once you have a certificate, you technically really can't do anything to the property. You can't go inside, you can't make repairs. There are laws in some states that allow you to do things like mow the grass or keep up with the landscaping if it's a vacant property. But other than that, you really can't work on them until you have an actual tax deed in your hand. We talked a little bit about removing tenants. Um, like I said, or I'm sorry, not tenants, removing occupants. So because they are not tenants, you can't evict them. You have to do what's called an ejectment action. You can also go back through the tax sale court and get what's called a writ of assistance. This is similar to if you buy something at sheriff's sale, where you're asking the court for permission to remove them. So it's a similar process. That's probably the process I would generally go, is a writ of assistance. But my favorite is cash for keys. Uh, you like with tenants, there are a lot of situations where if you just give them some money to move, then they might just move out voluntarily and they might move out without damaging the place. So it's something I like to endorse. One, I think it's a benefit to you as the investor, but also two, these people lost their home, right? So they might have been in this home 30, 40 years and now they're not, and they really have nowhere to go. So it's also a little bit like trying to help them out so that they don't feel like they've just completely lost everything. So my favorite option is cash for keys. And I tell everybody, new clients with tax sales, like I always say, they call me and say, "Hey, can you evict these people?" And I'm like, "Well, have you tried cash for keys? I would rather you give them the money than give the same amount of money that you're going to give to me anyway, because it's just a better overall option." Um, so I do like that. I do like that option. So I didn't see any questions pop up in the chat. I do want to go a little bit through more evictions. Tom, I'm sure there's probably a couple topics you wanted to hit too.
Well, yeah, I've got a couple things. First of all, when you were talking about the GIS, I think even if it's not tax sales, I think the GIS is a good part. It's part of our process. It should be probably part of your process as well when you're buying a house. So before you get to the closing table, try to get that parcel number. And I think you ought to be looking right at, I mean, this is literally in my presentation on the cruise of one of my mistakes that I've made is we bought a house and didn't even realize, and this is the crazy thing. We bought a house on the MLS, and on the MLS listing, it literally had the garage as one of the pictures in the listing, right? So we buy a house and then we rehab the house. We literally rehab the garage. We sold the house, and then the next person that bought the house tried to put a fence up, and when they got their survey done, they literally found out that like they didn't own the garage. Um, so so we trying to have a good name and try to do the right thing on our end, even though our sellers wouldn't, the people that sold the house to us wouldn't do the right thing, in my opinion. And I think the realtor also had part to do with that as well. Um, they didn't do the right thing, but we ended up buying this from somebody that just buys on tax sales to do nothing but just, mess up people's deals like this and end up costing us $8,000 to actually buy that so we could, do the right thing by our buyers. So I think using the GIS is something that we should be using on all of our deals, not just the tax sale deals. The other thing too, I wanted to hit, you kind of hit it briefly, but normally when people do a tax sale presentation, they talk about this at the very, very beginning. And it's the two reasons why anybody would buy on tax sale, right, Mike?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
The two main reasons why you would buy, and there are people that only strictly buy because they want the return. So a lot of what you were talking about of the best states to buy, it really depends on what your goal is. If your
Right.
goal is to get the house, those places with the highest return may not really be the best place because you're probably not going to get the house. You're probably going to get them to pay the return. So you got to kind of think through that. Like, what is my goal? Is my goal to get 20% return? Because you're right, like 25% in Texas. I mean, I wrote that down to look at that for myself personally, because I'll take 25% any day of the week. Um, So if your goal is to make the return that's stated and you're actually making it through the court system, and you're making it, how does that return get paid to you, Mike? I mean, I guess that's one question I don't really quite
Sure.
understand.
So, and you're
Um,
and you're and you're absolutely right. It's based on the individual investor. We represent, I think, 100 different investors, roughly about 100 different groups or people that invest, and they all kind of have different approaches. So, we've got one client who spends $5+ million per year on these things. They don't want the houses. No part of them wants a house. They spent $700,000 on a commercial business, assuming it would get redeemed, and it didn't. And so then they were like, "Well, now what? Now what do we do?" Because they assumed it was going to get redeemed because it was a functioning business. So some people just don't want the house; they just want the return. But I was trying to get them into the commissioner's sale, but they wouldn't do it. Um, but yeah, that's kind of, you're right. You have to decide what investment approach you want to take, whether you want the houses or whether you want the return on the money. It just kind of depends. Um, how you get that return is based on the redemption. So regardless of what the rate is, if somebody is redeeming the property, so they're paying all the, when I say redeeming, they're paying all of the back taxes, not just they don't have to pay your bid back, they have to pay a formulated amount. That amount includes the amount of back taxes owed at the time of redemption. It includes the interest that you have accrued on that money. So whatever the rate is, you have to pay that interest on top. So you get your money back, you get your interest back, and then a lot of states have what's called a reimbursable costs. So Indiana says that you can be reimbursed for attorney fees, you can be reimbursed for title search fees, and you can be reimbursed for property taxes that you pay after the sale. So those costs are reimbursed to you too. And so like if my property gets sold and I go to redeem it, they're going to give me this amount that the county determines as based on those factors. And I have to bring a cashier's check to the county for all of those amounts, pay the county, and then the county will contact you, the investor, and say, hey, the property got redeemed. You're entitled, they'll send you what's called a claim form. You're entitled to $107,000. Here is your claim form. Fill this out. Send your tax sale certificate back to us. We will mail you a check. So that's how you get your return back. The county takes it from the tax sale people or from the people who are redeeming and then sends it to you, the investor.
Gotcha. And is that the same or is that all different?
I
Is it
can't
two different
imagine
states,
that the
different things?
process is too different state by state. It seems like that's really the only functional way to do it. Because the only other thing in my mind is the bidder or the owner somehow locates the bidder and pays the bidder off. I don't think that happens. But there's really only the only other way to do it. I got to imagine the county plays a factor in pretty much every sale.
Gotcha. And then a follow-up to all that is in Northwest Indiana and Gary specifically, 10, 15 years ago, most of these houses were selling for $500. That's not the
Mhm.
case anymore. But and for a while it probably really wasn't worth it, to be honest with you, in my opinion, to buy. But now that the values have raised so much, now it's like, okay, if a house needs $80,000 in rehab, it actually might be worth taking on now because the values have doubled or
Right.
tripled in some of these cases. So, this is something that we personally as a company have kind of stayed away from. We've probably only bought, I don't know, 5 or 6 over the years, but this year we're actually getting into it and trying to get ready to go for this year's tax sale ourselves personally. So, hopefully this has been a help to you guys. If you guys have any other questions, any other final thoughts, Mike, or and if anybody's any final questions, you guys can put those in the chat. I know he had answered some of these. Does Indiana have an online tax lien sales?
I think they're talking about, the question was redeem over the counter. So I'm assuming that what
Over the
that means is
counter.
like a deed sale.
I
So when I was talking about deed sales where you can literally just buy a tax deed, you don't have a redemption period. The only county that does that is Marion County, and their process is in person, I believe. I don't think it's online.
I got you. Well, and it's weird. We have bought some in Michigan, and some of the states and some of the counties in Michigan are deed sales, and you literally leave with the title
Yeah,
that day. You leave with a tax title that day. So it's literally like you own it. There's no redemption. So kind of back to like what states you want to buy in, kind of understanding, do I want to buy the property? Because if you want to buy the property, some of those places in Michigan are great.
right.
You literally leave with the property. So or if you're looking for the return, um, then obviously you need to choose the different states that kind of go after that as well. And if you're looking at this as an acquisition, for yourself, like we are, um, you kind of have to look at it a different way. Is the face amount on the spreadsheet how much has to be paid to redeem?
I'm assuming, oh, Brian, I'm assuming what you're looking at is the Excel spreadsheet that came from the Lake County sale or any of these other sales. So the
Yeah.
the face amount is the minimum is the outstanding tax liability. That's what you would have had to have bid in the fall for the treasurer sale. Currently, the minimum bid is 500. So when it comes to calculating a redemption amount, yes, they are going to have to pay that outstanding tax liability. But then like I said, in Indiana, it's a little different. They're going to have to also pay 10% of whatever your bid is. So it's not a floating scale 10, 15%. It's for this sale, whatever your bid is, they have to pay you back 10% of that amount. So if your bid's 100,000, they have to pay the outstanding tax liability plus 10,000. But yes,
And that
face
starts
amount.
day one, or is that 10% APR?
No, 10% the day after the sale. So they redeem it the day after sale, it's 10%.
You got it. All right, cool. Any more questions? Any other final thoughts, Mike?
No, I think we covered it all. I kind of alluded to evictions because a little bit. That Indiana is again a very investor friendly state. So we really do get eviction hearings in 7 days, sometimes 10 days, and then we can get a possession order 7 to 10 days later. So from the day you get a hold of us and say, "Hey, Mike, I got to get this tenant out, and here's my lease, here's my ledger," I could probably get you possession 3 weeks later, where you can walk in. So that it's a definitely a unique state for that. And then there's of course Illinois where it takes 17, 18 months to get somebody out. So it just depends on what state you're looking at investing in.
Very, 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 very true. Very true. There are some other outside of that realm ways to get people out, but we're not going to talk about that on this call right here, right now. Talk to
That's
me
a private
on
group call.
talk to me on the cruise next week.
Yeah.
Can you stop sharing,
Oh,
Mike?
yeah.
Appreciate you, Mike. Thank you so much for
Yep.
taking some time today and investing in our community. As always, appreciate you and appreciate everybody for jumping on the call. So thank you, Mike. I really do appreciate you. I do want to remind everybody about next month's call here. It's going to be March 12th at 10 a.m. with Troy Eckert. I'm excited about this kind of buying land for royalty's sake or for a completely different way of investing. And I'm excited about that as well. If you guys are interested, I forgot to put this on the slides. Normally we do have this on the slides. I apologize. If you want to hear more about tax sales, and Mike will have a little bit more time about this, and you're local, you guys can come to our next meetup group, which is going to be February 29th, leap year day, right here in our office, 2701 West 45th Avenue, Gary, Indiana. And he's going to be also doing tax sales. And this is obviously tax sale season with the new sale coming up here in April. There's always a sale in the spring and a sale in the fall here in Northwest Indiana. So this is always a good time, and this is normally a really good turnout for that tax sale meetup group as well. So you guys want to learn more about that, or if you just want to connect with other local investors, you guys can meet us at our meetup group on the 29th. That's all we got for today, guys. Remember to be a conduit, not a bucket. Work to have to give those people we're going to see next week on the cruise. I'm excited to have that. And don't forget to get your guys' tickets for the free for all coming up. And if there's anything I can do to help you guys, please let me know, reach out. And just want to be able to be a blessing and be a help to as many people as we possibly can every single day. But that's going to do it for us. Have a good day, guys.
Thanks, guys.
God bless.